Were you racist before you worked on the border?
Was I racist before?
Or did it make you racist being on the border?
I've always been racist. I was born racist. I was born this way.
Thank you.
What's up, guys? What's up, man? Happy to have you guys here. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to kind of explain my background, how immigration works in America when it comes to illegal aliens coming here. And then obviously we'll open it up for discussion. I'm sure a lot of you guys probably have a bunch of questions on my views on women and Jews and a bunch of other stuff. So anyway, yeah, we're going there. We're going there. Welcome, motherfuckers. Yeah, we need to bring this back, right? We need to bring back bigotry and racism and everything else. It's awesome, isn't it? Like, man, I feel so good to be able to say this stuff. So, but all jokes aside, so I guess to start off, right? So I'm 35 years old. I'm an old man now. You guys can see the grays from me debating all these stupid bimbos. Holy. Man, bro, I've aged so much. I've aged more doing this than chasing after cartel killers on the southwest border, man. So talking to these girls, man, it's the worst. But anyway, so I was a special agent with Homeland Security Investigations, or HSI, for those that are not familiar with my background. I'll quickly go through and then I'll go into how immigration works in America, namely human smuggling and how illegal aliens come in. So I came on as an agent in 2013. I went to the academy later on in 2014, early 2014. I graduated from FLETC, which is down in Brunswick, Georgia, where Glencoe Federal Law Enforcement Training Center is what it stands for. And then I started my career in Laredo, Texas, okay, Laredo, Texas, right there on the southwest border. For those that are unfamiliar, it's about 2 hours south of San Antonio, Texas, on Interstate Highway 35, which Interstate Highway 35 goes from Laredo, Texas, all the way up until, I think, Minneapolis, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in the Midwest. And I started my career there, and I remember getting there and driving in my 2002 Honda, which I still have to this day, so it has a lot of sentimental value. And you know, I was like, what the hell is this? It's like, you're not even in the United States. It's like you're in Mexico, right? We're talking about dirt roads, you know, sand everywhere, you know, brush everywhere, no buildings. Everything is like really flat. You don't even think you're in the United States. And it was kind of like a culture shock. No one speaks English. Everyone is Mexican. Meanwhile, I'm like some random 6'3" ambiguous Arab dude or whatever, black, whatever people want to call me. It depends on who's asking, right? If it's black people, they say, you ain't one of us. If it's white people, it's like, oh, yeah, you look like you're black. If it's Asian, they're like, well, I don't know what the black man is. But anyway, which, by the way, you guys got a lot of Asians here, man. Shout out to the Asians, man. Holy, I was like, I was shocked. Yeah, I was like, yeah, shout out to the Asians. Yeah. Bro, I came from Miami. I haven't seen an Asian in forever. I was like, even... Maya went like this for a second, man. I was squid. I was like, what? They're here? This is awesome. I had so many questions. Why are you guys good at math? Why do you guys always say, hurry up and buy? It's like, I can't take my time and buy. Like, damn, man, I'm supporting your business. But anyway, so it's like it's Mexico, right? So I'm there, and I pretty much got a crash course on how a lot of illegal aliens come to the United States. Also, when I was there, I did a lot of drug trafficking cases, Mexican cartels, organized crime, all that stuff. But for today's purposes, I'm going to talk about immigration and how it kind of works. So when I was there, I was assigned to a human smuggling group, okay? And there's different groups that we have because HSI is an agency that does a lot of different crimes, you know, child exploitation, drugs, weapons, illegal aliens, human trafficking, human smuggling, which there is a distinction. I'm going to talk about that here as well. So I was in a human smuggling group, but I also did drug investigations while I was there because it's so busy, right? You're always on call. Border Patrol is catching people all the time. Customs and Border Protection, OFO, Office of Field Operations, who are the blue uniform guys, they're catching people all the time. So you're constantly getting called out because think of the Department of Homeland Security think of it as like a big police department, right? And Border Patrol, who's green uniforms, and Customs and Border Protection, who's blue uniform, they're the ones interdicting and or catching people when they try to come into the country. And when they do catch someone, what ends up happening is they call HSI, and they're the detectives. So think of them as the investigators for DHS, because within DHS, HSI is the biggest investigative agency. The Secret Service is also in DHS and some others, but Secret Service doesn't really do criminal investigations like that. They actually rarely do them. Most of their assets go into protection, but that's a whole other conversation, which I'm happy to talk about that too, because I've done protection details too in the Q&A portion. But anyway, so you're often getting called, and what'll end up happening is you'll be on duty, the duty agent, which you'll be on duty for like 24 hours or whatever, and you're on call, and they can call you, and you show up to the ports and handle whatever it is. And in this case, I was in a human smuggling group, so they would call me for when they catch a load, which is basically Border Patrol would catch a smuggler with a group of aliens, whether he was driving them, he was moving them through the brush or whatever. So this is the part I'm going to kind of explain to you guys how human smuggling works and how illegal aliens come to the United States. So I think it's very important that people understand that when it comes to illegal aliens in the United States, 9 out of 10 times that illegal alien probably had to pay some illicit criminal network to be able to come into the United States. It's almost impossible to be able to come to the United States illegally, cross the border, or come through maritime options. I'll talk about maritime smuggling here in a second, but for now we're going to focus on land border because that's the most prevalent. Any illegal alien that comes in typically has to utilize an organization, and there's a multitude of different reasons for this. The two big ones I could think of are basically they have to pay someone to guide them through because the land border is vast and enormous, and you can easily get killed through the elements and the weather and all the other things that are going on there. And you'll get messed up. You'll get fucked up. Like if you go and try to cross the border without paying the Zetas who run that part of the border, they will whoop your ass and or kill you for doing that. So illegal aliens have to go through some type of organization to be able to come into the United States. So how does this work? Well, let's say, since we're talking about Asians, let's say Ling Ling, right, decides, hey, I want to go to the United States, right? I want to go ahead and have a future for my family, right? So what ends up happening is he contacts someone in his local area, right, in China, wherever he may be, and there's going to be probably like a facilitator and or like a coordinator, right? That individual will put him in touch with someone else, and that person will start making travel arrangements. So he'll give him a quote, hey, it's going to cost you somewhere. When I was on the job, Chinese nationals were paying like $60,000 to come to the United States, right? And the further you are from the United States or the nationality you're from, if you're Arab, if you're Indian, Pakistani, Asian, Russian, what we call exotics, you have to pay significantly more money to be smuggled into the United States outside of, maybe a regular Mexican or a Hispanic from South America. So he contacts this guy, Ling Ling contacts this guy, hey, I want to go to America. It's like, all right, cool, I got you. He puts him in touch with someone else, and then he pays that guy like an initial fee, right? It could be a couple $1,000s, whatever it may be. So he pays that guy facilitates his next round of the trip where he'll get him to somewhere maybe in Europe or some other place where he's able to travel. And the goal is to get him into a transit country. Now, we're going to focus on, land border. I'll talk about maritime after. But let's say he's going to go through Mexico, right, which is the common place where a lot of illegal aliens coming through. So they're going to probably get him to Mexico City. Once it gets to Mexico City, because it's a very popular staging area, a lot of smugglers live there, that smuggler will house him for a day or two, and then, he's got to pay that smuggler, and then he's going to go to the next leg of the trip, which, let's say, from Mexico City, which is right in central Mexico typically, they move him up to a border town. Let's say Nuevo Laredo in this case, right? Nuevo Laredo is directly across the border from Laredo, Texas, right, which is where I used to be. So when they get to Nuevo Laredo, getting ready to cross the border, they'll put him at a stash house. And they could be at this stash house for a day, a week, months. And it's contingent upon a couple of things. It's contingent upon, is it safe to cross the border? Is Border Patrol going to catch them? Do they have someone available to cross them over the border? And have they paid up? If they haven't done any of these three things, more than likely they're going to be stuck there for a bit, right? And meanwhile, while they're traveling and doing all this, they're in constant contact with their family. They're sending money to smugglers. They're sending money to this guy, sending money to this guy, et cetera, to facilitate that person's entry to the United States. Now, assuming all three of those prerequisites are met and they're good, what ends up happening is they're going to have to pay something called a quota, right? Which is basically a tax to the Mexican cartel. Now, when I was there, it was the Los Zetas that ran Nuevo Laredo, but now I think it's Cartel del Noreste when I left. I was there from 2014 to 2018. And there was a war going on, like with the Mexican Marines and the Zetas, because the Zetas are like a paramilitary group. So they're very strict. So you pay $1,000 to cross the Rio Grande River, right? And that's a fee that goes directly to a cartel. And I think it's also very important to distinguish that a lot of the times these human or smuggling organizations aren't necessarily cartel members. They might have relatives, they might know some people, but they almost operate a lot of the times as like their own separate entity, and they have to pay the cartels to operate. Now, obviously it depends, right? Some cartel guys are smugglers or whatever, but people always think that like, oh yeah, the cartel smuggle aliens. A lot of the times they don't from a day-to-day standpoint because it's a very labor-intensive criminal organization. I mean, you're moving people around, you're housing them, you're feeding them, you got to give them water, you got to be able to keep them in a stash house, you keep them with their family. So it's an enormous amount of bookkeeping and logistics that go into it. This is why a lot of criminals don't like smuggling illegal aliens, because with drugs, you don't got to feed them or house them or anything. You just move them. But with people, it's very difficult. So a lot of the cartels don't like to do that because it's a lot of work, right? So what they do instead is they let these human smuggling organizations specialize in it, and they just pay them a tax, and they get a cut of every single person that crosses the river and comes into their territory. It's a much more efficient way to make money and profit from the illicit business without necessarily getting your hands dirty. But anyway, so assuming all that's done, they cross into the United States. Now, a lot of the times when they'll have like what we call exotics, like let's say Ling Ling and his squad, he'll probably be traveling with a couple of other Chinese nationals. They'll move them all together, right? And they'll move them all together because a lot of the times what will happen is there'll be one person that's responsible for that group of Chinese individuals or these exotics, right? So they'll move them together because they know that once they get them to the drop-off point, someone is probably going to pick all of them up at the same time, probably go to New York City, LA, San Francisco, one of these places where, you know, that ethnicity is, or that group of people is common. So once they cross into the United States, now the United States branch of the criminal organization takes over. So we have a transnational portion in the Chinese side, then we have a Mexican portion. Now we're going to get into the U.S. side. Once they cross the border into the United States, now they're dealing with the next leg of the organization. So when they cross, right, especially in the Nuevo Laredo, they're going to need someone to get them across the river. Once they get across the river, we call them a foot guide. Well, like, you know, regular people call them coyotes. That coyote is responsible for guiding them throughout the brush to get them to a destination where they could be picked up. A lot of the times, they're going to try to walk in a way where they don't activate the Border Patrol sensors. On the border, there's all kinds of sensors all over the place. And the really experienced foot guides are not only able to get the group across, but they're also able to get them across and navigate so they don't trip these sensors that activates Border Patrol where they go out and look for them. So and some of these foot guides have been doing this for 10, 20, 30 years. Like these guys are career foot guides, right? So their job is to get them to where they need to get picked up and then go right back to Mexico. Their job is not to get caught a lot of the times like some of them do. The amateurs get caught. The smart ones get them to where they got to go. They're traveling with a compass. They know they have resources with them. They have a phone, multiple phones, and then again where they got to go. Once they get them to a highway, typically some type of rural highway or whatever, another smuggler is going to come in a van or a vehicle, pick them up quickly, and get them to a stash house. Now, on the southwest border, guys, it's not like up here where we have like regular police patrolling. You're going to see Border Patrol units everywhere on the southwest border. And that's because they have their authority on the border and its functional equivalent, right? Or it's called the functional equivalent of the border, right? That's why there's Border Patrol checkpoints. If anyone here been to South Texas or Arizona or any of these places on the southwest border? Any of you guys went through a Border Patrol checkpoint where they ask you, what is your citizenship? One guy. Oh, man, you're an Indian, bro. You're in trouble. I am Indian. Secondary. Did you put deodorant on today? I'm just kidding. So I had to, man. Come on, man. We don't got that many Indian guys in Miami. Come on, bro. I had to do it. So I will say thank you. Come again. I'll say, thank you. Come again. I'm just sorry. I couldn't resist. So anyway, so where was I? So once they get picked up, right, that person picks them up, and they got to get them to a stash house immediately, okay, because Border Patrol is crawling all over the place. So they got to make sure that they don't get stopped by Border Patrol, because Border Patrol can, like, stop the vehicle, do an immigration inspection on everybody in the vehicle. Hey, of what country are you a citizen of? That's the question they ask. And that's why when you guys go through when you're on the southwest border and you go through these Border Patrol checkpoints, they can ask you that question. Now, there was a time, funny story about this, where people were recording themselves going through checkpoints and not answering the question, right? This is an illegal checkpoint. I'm not going to answer this question. And I got a funny story on that I'll tell you guys after I give you this monologue. Someone remind me, and I'll tell you the funny story about these people that try to go viral on YouTube. But so they have this stuff. So they got to get, long story short, it's crawling with Border Patrol. They got to get them to a stash house. So they get them to a stash house, right? Once they get to the stash house, now they have to deal with the stash house operator. That stash house operator, a lot of the times, has 10, 20, 30 different aliens at that house from other people that dropped them off. And while those aliens are sitting there, they're responsible for feeding them, giving them water, giving them food, etc. As a matter of fact, one of the ways that I would get my search warrants sometimes is I would check the trash of anyone that I thought was a suspected stash house operator, because I'm going to see a lot of cheap food. I'm going to see a lot of, disposable plates and plastic knives, all this other stuff. And this is actually all good probable cause to establish that they are using that house and that residence as a stash house. Because you're going to see, you like on paper, when you do the check, 2 or 3 people are supposed to live at that address. But you see food for like, these dudes are throwing a party every day. It's like, bro, I know you guys aren't throwing a fiesta here. What's going on? So that's actually a great way to get probable cause and a great way to identify a stash house. And they're all over the place in Laredo, Texas, on the southwest border in general. Whether you're in Laredo, McAllen, the RGV, doesn't matter. There's stash houses everywhere. Now, their goal is to get the aliens off the road immediately, get them into a house. Once they get them in the house, they want to move them. Now, the stash house operator is going to be pressuring the aliens when they get there. Hey, did you pay the next leg? Because if they didn't pay to that stash house operator and his portion of the organization, they're not going to be allowed to be picked up from that house and move forward, right? And this is going to be the most critical component of the leg of the trip, because once they get picked up from that stash house, more than likely they're going to take them north past the Border Patrol checkpoint, whether they get smuggled on a truck, a regular car, in the trunk, whatever it is. And this is where they run into a lot of danger as well, because they can get, put into a place or into a car, and, sometimes it's really hot, especially in South Texas. They end up suffocated, they end up dying, whatever it may be. I remember I had one big case out of San Antonio where like 100 aliens were in the back of a truck in Walmart. You guys might have seen this a couple years back, and a bunch of them died and suffocated, right? Because from the heat exhaustion, because the truck driver left them there at a parking lot in July. It just didn't come back, and a bunch of them died, and they couldn't get out. So this happens all the time on the southwest border, where illegal aliens are dying due to the travel circumstances, right? And it doesn't get reported often, but it's really sad. So, and they always get an enhancement if we arrest them and someone dies or gets hurt, or there's what we call an endangerment, which is a sentencing enhancement. So. So now that they're at the stash house and they got to get to the next leg, this is very important, because more than likely they're going to go to San Antonio, right? And the reason why San Antonio is so important is because, number one, it's past the checkpoint. There's a big checkpoint called Checkpoint 29 on Interstate Highway 35, where if the smuggler are able to get the aliens past that, they're pretty much home free, right? Because, like I said before, the Border Patrol is heavily concentrated 30 miles inward into the border and beyond. Anything past that, it's going to be satellite offices. They don't have the same capacity to really interdict aliens like on the southwest border. They don't have the checkpoints and the same amount of resources and the same amount of staff, et cetera. They're typically going to be assigned to like a local police department or a federal agency that doesn't prioritize immigration. So if Border Patrol is beyond the checkpoint, they're going to be far and few between. So they get to San Antonio. If they make it there, successfully, they make it there, and then from there, whoever's responsible for those aliens picks them up there, pays off the final fee, and they're good to go. And then they end up going to wherever they need to go in the United States. A lot of times, since San Antonio is right there on Interstate Highway 35 and 10, Interstate Highway 10 goes east to west, goes from Jacksonville all the way to LA, and then Interstate 35, like I said before, takes you all the way to the Midwest, and you can get anywhere else you need to. Austin is an hour up from San Antonio, then another 3 or 4 hours is Dallas, and then you're pretty much on your way wherever you need to go. And then the interstate highway system is very critical for the smuggling of aliens, obviously. So that's kind of how smuggling works in the United States when it comes to the land border version, right? So, and then they can get to wherever they got to go. So Ling Ling made it, right? He makes it through. He pays this ridiculous amount of money to different people within the organization to facilitate his next step of the movement. And then from there, he gets to wherever he's got to go. Next thing you know, he's in Flushing, Queens, selling fake Jordans. So now when it comes to maritime, very similar. The only difference is instead of going to Mexico, guys, they're going to go to the Bahamas, okay? Now, in my career, just to give you guys a little bit of background, I started my career in Laredo, Texas from Laredo. I was there for about 4 years, left in 2018, went to the Miami field office from 2018 to 2020 before I resigned because, we started having this podcast, started going viral and stuff like that. So, hey, bro, you can't be talking about this stuff on the internet, So I ended up resigning. I left on good terms, but it was a great, it was a fun time. But I got a look at maritime smuggling. Now, the difference between maritime smuggling and land border smuggling is with the maritime, the transit country instead of Mexico is going to typically be the Bahamas, right? So they get to the Bahamas. Bimini is a big one, especially since it's just a few miles off the coast of Miami. They'll get into the Bahamas. They'll pay their fees, et cetera, and then they'll be smuggled across via boat. Now, obviously, since it's maritime, they can't do the same level of volume as the southwest border, so most aliens come in through the southwest border. But, I do think it's important to note that maritime smuggling is still very prevalent. It's not just, the Miami Vice days where they're smuggling drugs and illegal aliens. With the speedboats, they also do it with illegal aliens. And in that one, right, they'll typically, a lot of times they'll clean them up, say that they're just passengers, they give them fake documents, and maritime is also very prevalent as well. So that's typically how it goes on that end, and then they come in through whether it be Miami or one of these other big ports, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, etc. They're coming in. So that's kind of how smuggling works, guys. Now, I think it's very important for people to distinguish that there is a difference between human smuggling and human trafficking. I see people talk about this all the time. Like, even law enforcement professionals will get up there and conflate human smuggling and human trafficking. And the big difference between human smuggling and human trafficking, guys, is with the human smuggling, a lot of the times, almost every time, they're paying an illicit organization to come to the United States, tens of thousands of dollars, depending on where they're from, versus the human trafficking typically occurs once they get here, and maybe they didn't pay their dues, maybe they're working for a boss that's taking advantage of them, they take their documents or whatever, they're being forced to work to pay off a debt. So that's the difference between human smuggling and human trafficking. Smuggling, they're paying to come here, they get in, and a lot of the times they just want to get them out the house, like I told you guys with the stash house operators, whatever, because they're hotboxed down there in the southwest border. And then once they make it to their final destination, that's where they're more likely going to be a victim for the human trafficking. Now, does it occur during the actual trip? Of course. It happens where people are being held in stash houses or whatever. They can't pay their fee. They get stuck there. They're extorted in the family. That happens, of course, as well. But it's not as common as TV and people make it out. The human trafficking a lot of times ends up happening once they get to their destination or where they're supposed to go, because the smugglers want to get paid, and they know for them to get paid, they need to get that person out of their midst and get them to the next leg of their trip. So that's in general how smuggling works in the United States and how illegal aliens come to the United States. And I think it's very important that you guys all know this, because people think all the time, oh my God, these are like innocent people that are just coming here and they're being abused. But make no mistake about it, they have to pay an illicit organization to facilitate their entry into the United States. And these illicit organizations a lot of times also, are involved in drug trafficking, they're involved in extortion, they're involved in murder, they're involved in all kinds of things. Because like I said before, even if that human smuggling organization isn't intimately tied to maybe the cartel, they're still paying the cartels because they're operating on their grounds. So I guess I can open it up for questions if anybody had anything for immigration, and then if anybody wants to talk about anything else, we can. But I saw like a hand or two go up, and I went over a lot, by the way, guys. So if you need me to go back and refine anything, please let me.
What's the level of concern about Islamic terrorism or terrorism on any stretch coming through as terrorists? Is that a huge concern? Are there a lot of numbers? Are they building cells in America by bringing them through the illegal immigration?
Great question. Yeah, so it does happen. I worked on a couple of cases where we had Pakistanis that were utilizing the Mexican corridor to come in the United States. Obviously, when you get human smuggling cases like that, you bring in the FBI, because the FBI is the lead agency when it comes to terrorism. And it's interesting because like human smuggling is typically what HSI investigates, but if there's like a terrorism nexus, you do have to bring the FBI in, but they don't know what they're doing 9 out of 10 times, right? We call them famous but incompetent, right? So if there is that nexus, you definitely do bring them in. But what ends up happening a lot of the times is you can't prove material support for terrorism, so you end up charging them with like an immigration violation because the material support to a terrorist organization is like the bread and butter charge for the FBI. But a lot of the times they can't even charge that. It's very difficult to prove. So they end up using other charges a lot of times to get rid of these individuals, or outright use immigration statutes to deport them. But it does happen. It's not as common. But it does happen, and that's why they charge. That's specifically why smugglers charge nationals from certain countries so much money: China, Pakistan, Arab countries, Russia, etc. Any country that's basically like has an adversarial stance against the United States, any alien coming from that country, they get charged 2, 3, 4 times as much. I've seen upwards of $100,000 for an illegal alien for some of these countries to come into the U.S., especially if they've been deported before, etc. Because for these smuggling organizations, they know that if there's an exotic that has a shady past and they get caught, that's going to slow business down for them. They can't move people through as much as they want, and that ends up hurting them. So it does happen. They're just a lot more cautious about it, and they charge them a lot more money to do it.
Are there any other questions? If so, please come over here and you'll have the mic.
What were some of your experiences like with protection? Because my dad actually works for DHS as a special agent, had to do protection for the United Nations. What was your experiences with protection like?
That's interesting. That's when I had to go to the UN. I protected the president of Congo. It's cool, man. I mean, like, I could see why so many Secret Service agents hate their jobs, though. Like, okay, so you guys are all in college, so I'm going to give you guys some game here real fast. The 3 worst agencies to work for, guys, okay? They're going to hate me for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. United States Secret Service, U.S. Marshal Service, and DSS might suck too, Diplomatic Security Service. And the reason why is because people think that, like, you know, you join the marshals, you're going to be in a task force and catching people. What ends up happening a lot of times, you just transport prisoners around. Secret Service, you think you're going to be doing financial investigations or protecting the president. No, you're guarding a garbage can somewhere, you know, when they're like meeting with someone. Like, and it's not even the president, it's like their kid, right, who's in college that's an idiot. So, and then DSS, like, think of it as like Secret Service, but you're like abroad. You're doing a lot of protection details. So the protection detail agencies are not that fun, and then the marshals obviously doing courtroom security and moving prisoners around. The fugitive task force is fun, but what ends up happening is you can only do it for like 3-6 months at a time, and the most senior guys get that coveted position on those task forces. Protection is cool. It's just that, like, I can see why the Secret Service has the highest. They have some like the highest attrition rates, like people leave or go to other agencies, and they also have the highest divorce rates because they work so much. Now, if you want to make money, young single guy, one of the best agencies to work for. You'll make a bunch of money. You can get overtime, which many criminal investigator positions don't offer overtime. Secret Service does. So if you want money, you want to travel, single, great. You have a family, terrible. Get out of there. But yeah, I've done a couple details, and I was like, wow, this blows. You're just sitting there in a suit, standing next to a freaking garbage can or a door, like just securing a door, because it's like the way they do stuff is like they typically have like a grid security system where they need people in certain positions. A lot of times for deterrence, also for visual stuff. So it ends up putting you in a weird spot where you're just sitting there for 10, 12 hours looking at a wall. Sucks, but yeah. But UN is exactly where I went to. Is your dad like HSI?
Yes, he is.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. We get called on all the time to help Secret Service because they have such few agents. Anytime these foreign dignitaries come in, they need help. So HSI, since they're both in DHS, they get pulled all the time to help out with that because they don't have enough bodies. Also, on the last presidential election, HSI was heavily augmented on the Secret Service details. Matter of fact, that's actually one of the things I was critical of, that they had a lot of like Secret Service guys and other agencies that help with these Secret Service details, and what ends up happening is like these people aren't as refined or as good at protection as the Secret Service agents, and that's where you end up with lapses in security, you run into problems, and bam, next thing you know, some weirdo is taking a shot at the president, right? So that's not cool. But yeah. Good question, man.
Hi.
What's up?
Yeah, so this question doesn't really have much to do with like the whole immigration topic, but
Sure.
rather more about the logistics of it that you were mentioning earlier. So when it comes to like trafficking people, especially past the US border, and you were mentioning there were certain checkpoints, or especially like very rough checkpoints, what do they do to get people past? Say like you're in a car with like 4 other Chinese immigrants, like do they give them fake documents? Do they give them fake stories? Like how does the whole process work of smuggling them past these checkpoints to safe areas in the US?
Fantastic question. Really, really good question. Typically, the more sophisticated the smuggling scheme, the more money the smugglee is paying. So if they're getting fake documents, or they're getting, even sometimes like procuring a visa through fraud or whatever, they typically paid a lot of money to be able to do that. So the more money they pay, the better the experience would be. So if we're gonna talk about a regular smuggler, they're just basically like, trying to see what they can do, whether they're smuggling them in a truck, the back of a car, in a trunk. Maybe they're moving them through the checkpoint at the same time as like a load is being moved, right? They can lose some weed to go ahead and move some aliens through because they're gonna make some money on that because the weed isn't as expensive. They'll do fake loads or whatever. So there's many ways that they get it done, or they just go around the highways and just like move them through these rural highways all across South Texas. So there's a bunch of different ways that they get them through, but typically the more sophisticated the smuggling scheme, the more the smugglee is paying to the smuggler to get a better experience. I hate to say like first class smuggling arrangement, but that's kind of what it comes down to depending on how it goes. But yeah, this is just like, and this is, guys, when I'm talking about illegal aliens coming to the United States, I haven't even touched like the visa fraud, the overstays, the massive amount of people using marriage fraud and document benefit fraud, getting these documents illegally. Like, that's a whole other thing in itself. And we have different squads just assigned to that don't even touch the human smuggling stuff. They're focusing more on the document benefit fraud with a lot of these DMVs, et cetera. So that's also another problem. You got dirty immigration attorneys that are filing documents for people to get them married or whatever it may be, because marriage fraud is like huge. Like in Miami, for example, the going rate was paying $10,000 to $20,000 to a U.S. citizen to go ahead and get, a fake marriage. They literally walk you through the entire process of what to tell the CIS officer when you go in for your interviews, how to fill the paperwork, how to do everything to, get the green card, and then obviously get towards naturalization. And the thing is if you become a naturalized citizen, it's very hard to denat you. It's very, very hard. Like, you'd have to be damn near a terrorist, and they'd have to prove like deliberate fraud for them to be able to get you denaturalized. Because, quite frankly, a lot of AUSAs, a lot of federal prosecutors don't want to take those cases. And that's another thing that's also very important for people to understand. In the federal system, agents don't have as much discretion to arrest people as people think. They have to do everything through the United States Attorney's Office versus like local cops. Like, if you're driving drunk, you're doing something dumb, they observe drugs on you, they can make that arrest right then and there. They don't go to call a prosecutor. Feds don't operate that way. They have to always get concurrence from the United States Attorney's Office to arrest anyone on a probable cause. And even if they do a probable cause, they still got to file a criminal complaint, get it sent in within a day. That's a whole affidavit the agent has to write up with their probable cause. And then they got to bring the guy to court, et cetera. It's a very cumbersome process in the federal system. It's not streamlined like the state and locals. So, and if a case isn't sexy, prosecutors simply are going to take it. An immigration case, a lot of the times, especially when there's a Democrat in, they don't want to take them. Right now, with Trump in office, right, this is the first time I've ever seen the FBI mobilized doing roundups of illegal aliens. They never help out with that stuff, man. Those guys are useless. But all these agencies working together, like DEA, ATF, FBI, agencies that historically have never had Title VIII authority assisting, this is something I've never seen before, unprecedented. But it's good that he's cracking down on it. But, that's a whole other conversation in itself. But does that answer your question, bro? As far as...
Can I follow up? Yeah, okay, just a little add-on. So when you say paying for these premium processes,
yeah,
like, regardless of how premium the process you pay, or in premium for that matter, like, does it still guarantee a pass from, like, through the border checks, or like, does
No.
not paying enough, like, maybe put you at a higher risk of getting caught?
No, it makes it where the chance of you getting caught and the travel is going to be less strenuous and less painful, because like getting smuggled in the United States sucks. It could take weeks, months at a time to just move from country to country, set yourself up. You get delayed sometimes because Border Patrol's doing certain things and the smugglers don't want to move you because they think you'll get caught. But most of the time, they get at least 2 to 3 tries. Most smuggling organizations, it's like the return policy. Like, most smuggling organizations will give the smuggler 2 to 3 attempts to try without charging them again. So if they get caught, let's say, very common, they cross the river, right, into the United States, like Lingling in a squad, right? Let's say they get caught trying to cross into the river. Border Patrol apprehends them, sends them back with something called an expedited removal, which means they get deported within 2 weeks. That smuggling organization that was responsible for them, they'll get them back in Nuevo Laredo, and then they'll try again, when the coast is clear. And they typically get a few chances.
All right, thank you so much.
No problem, man. Good questions.
Hey, Myron. I
Yo.
wanted to start by thanking you for coming to our university and raising awareness about this issue. As an American citizen, I really value someone's voice as big as yours to spend their valuable time talking about an issue as important as illegal immigration.
Appreciate that, man. No one really talks about it. Like, I haven't seen any YouTubers go into like real detail about this and how immigration works in America. And I think if more Americans knew that damn near every illegal alien that you see here in the United States probably came in through some illicit organization, I think people would look at immigration differently, because that person, whether they did it inadvertently or directly, funded these transnational criminal organizations. Obviously, that's not their intention to fund these organizations, but they understand that it's a means to an end for them to come here, because otherwise you can't get through. You would literally die from the elements or get beat up by the cartel for trying to come in without doing it. Now, have I seen situations where guys have literally come in without using organization? Yeah, but every single time I see it, it'll be like their 3rd or 4th time, and I'll interview them like, hey, how'd you get here? Yeah, I paid one time, I couldn't get through. I said, screw it. I just tried to go in myself. They caught me, they beat my ass, and then I got sent back, and they've been assaulted multiple times for doing it. So most people don't want to deal with that. So, sorry, go ahead, Bill, what's your question?
No worries. I would define my political views similar to yours as, an America First patriot.
Yeah.
But
Not Israel.
But I wanted to ask your opinion on the latest rhetoric out of Washington.
Sure.
There's been a lot of talk about war with Iran, and someone I would label myself as reluctantly supportive of the Trump administration going into 2024. I view this prospective war with Iran as not something I would regret my Trump vote over that. Something similar to that. Would you agree with that statement?
100% I agree with you. I'm anti-war all the way. Like, I am anti-neocon, anti-war. I think going to war in the Middle East for Israel is bullshit. Let's just call a spade a spade. A lot of these conservative, thank you, I appreciate it. A lot of these right-wing, political commentators cuck for Israel, and they don't want to admit. That's why up until like October 7th, you couldn't even have this discussion. Most Americans didn't know what Zionism was. They didn't know about the ethno-apartheid state that Israel is. I mean, Netanyahu's in America right now, and obviously Trump pulled out the chair for him once again. But I find it absolutely ridiculous how people are saying, oh yeah, defund Ukraine, we need to stop this war in Ukraine, but then those same people will turn around and say, oh, but we need to give Israel everything they need for war. And the problem is that Iran is a capable country. They have an advanced missile system. They can absolutely attack us all across the Middle East if we decided to try to destroy their nuclear program, which is what they're angling to do. Right now, they're not refining it to levels of nuclear weaponry, but who knows? Because they look at it like the United States, Israel has a nuclear bomb, which they stole from us, by the way. So there's been an arm race effectively since like the 50s in the Middle East, thanks to Israel illegally procuring nuclear weapons. So I don't want a war with Iran. As a matter of fact, when I voted for Trump too, just like you. The two reasons I voted for Trump were anti-war. I wanted to end the war in Ukraine, and I wanted to make sure that we kind of get a reel on Netanyahu, because Netanyahu was going crazy under the Biden administration. Do whatever he wanted. He didn't listen to him. He was still, breaking ceasefire deals, etc. So, yeah, man, and immigration were the two main things I voted for him for. So right now, what are we getting? We're getting a potential war with Iran. Things are escalating. We have the Signal Gate situation that happened last week or 2 weeks ago. And on top of that, we have college students being deported for speech that's anti-Israel, which I found absolutely ridiculous, that they're deporting college students that are legally here because they're criticisms of Israel instead of deporting illegal aliens that are here. Ridiculous, man. Because I know for a fact, ICE ERO, who's responsible for the deportation, by the way, guys, and I'll explain this real fast, just so you guys really understand this. Once an illegal alien makes it through the United States, let's go back to that Ling Ling scenario, right? He makes it to New York, right? He's selling fake Jordans in Flushing, Queens. Ling Ling made it through. He paid a $60K. His smugglers got him through. Now that he's actually in the United States, he's going to be the responsibility of an agency called ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement and Removal Operations, ERO, right? And ERO has only a certain amount of ICE officers that they can go ahead and delegate to catching illegal aliens. And, these major cities have a lot of illegal aliens. So a lot of times they end up, putting their resources into going after criminal aliens, or what's called the CAP program. And if what's basically happened is, if you guys notice on Twitter, ICE was putting out how many people they were arresting every day, illegal aliens. They stopped putting those numbers up. Why? Because they basically shifted their focus to go after anti-Semitism on college campuses. So now they diverted those resources that were supposed to be allotted to removing illegal aliens and put them towards college students that they think have pro-Hamas sentiment, or they think are anti-Israel or whatever. And obviously that takes an enormous amount of resource, because not only do these ICRO officers have to get pulled off these details and grab these illegal aliens, now they got to investigate, go through stuff, look at who's at the protests, identify these individuals, figure out what school they go to, what kind of visa they hold. All this takes an enormous amount of time. Then they got to go out and find them. And then they go ahead and arrest them, and you're going to need like a couple of officers just to arrest one person. I'm sure you guys saw the viral story like a week or two of a Turkish student who was arrested up in Tufts in Somerville, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston, for writing an op-ed, right, that was talking about protesting Israel and protesting them and boycotting their products. So that's kind of where we're at, man. And this is all being done to facilitate that very war, because they want to shut down dissident of anyone that's critical of Israel and the potential war that we're going towards, which isn't good, man. I think going after students for free speech in the United States on the behalf of another country is absolutely wild. Like the fact that you could take a college student, burn an American flag, say I hate Trump, etc., and that student won't get deported, but if he says, hey, I don't like Netanyahu and the legal occupation, they'll get deported. That's wild to me. Criticize a foreign country, you go to jail. Criticize our country, you stay. So, yeah. But I agree with you on the anti-war sentiment, bro, 100%. We don't want a war with Iran. It's not good. So, good question. Of course.
Hi, Myron.
Yo.
Again, big fan. I really appreciate you coming here and raising awareness to a lot of issues that are affecting us all. And I'd really just like to ask you, sort of in similar respect to my brother, why, or rather, how you found the courage to raise awareness to issues in specific regard to the Israel-Palestine conflict and Russia-Ukraine. How you found the courage and the will to raise issue to these issues with great sacrifice to your own business and your own life, sort of. How
Yeah,
you
no, I
found
appreciate that, man. Yeah, I got demonetized for talking about this stuff because I was talking about Israel's influence on America before October 7th. You know, and before talking about this before October 7th was very taboo. You know, they'd call you an anti-Semite. They would say all these things about you. But, I mean, you don't even got to go to October 7th. You can go to the USS Liberty. You can go to JFK, 9/11. Like, all these events have Zionist fingerprints all over them, right? I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, the Jews did it, because that's, like, stupid. But what I can absolutely tell you is that Israeli intelligence had fingerprints on all of these different events that went down, and in some cases were literally involved with, like with the USS Liberty, where they bombed and killed 30 sailors, right? And this is stuff that was suppressed information for decades, right? I'm really happy that like Candace Owens had Phil Turney on, who was a survivor from the USS Liberty. That video got like 5-6 million views, and I went through the comments, and I was shocked at how many people had no idea about this historical event. So talking about this stuff prior to October 7th is a huge taboo, one of the fastest ways to get yourself banned. But I'm glad that we're finally able to have this conversation, because I think October 7th kind of highlighted, you know, people seeing these kids dying, getting blown up or whatever, and people are asking, well, hold on, how is Israel able to get away with this? And then bam, they started to figure out, you know, the tentacles of the Zionist lobby in our politics, how they run our foreign policy, and they've been doing so for literally decades, and how they've gotten us in a lot of situations in the Middle East. I mean, every war in the Middle East has pretty much been done for Israel's benefit. Every terrorist attack that we've endured has typically come from Islamic extremists that are angry about our foreign policy with Israel. You know, the letter to America that Osama bin Laden wrote in 2002, it went viral on TikTok, I think in November of 2023, right after October 7th. And it was amazing to me how it went viral, because most Americans didn't know why we got attacked on 9/11. Obviously, the loss of American citizens is unacceptable. It's why I joined up in the service. But I do think it's important to understand why your adversaries dislike you. And the fact that we've not been honest with the American public and telling them that, hey, it's not that they hate us because we're free, they hate us because we invade their lands and bomb their people on behalf of Israel. I think the American public needs to know that. But this is something that's been suppressed for literally decades, and now people are finally starting to wake up. And I'm glad that, you know, in the conservative space, which has typically been, you know, super pro-Israel, super, you know, they're our greatest ally, whatever, I'm glad to see people on the right wing waking up to this, when it's typically been, you know, people on the left that talked about this. But now this is the only topic I could think of that both people on the far right and people on the far left agree on, which is the control of our nation by a foreign state in the Middle East called Israel. So, yeah, it's getting crazy. Yeah, even Antifa, that's probably the only thing me and Antifa agree on, probably. Those losers.
All right. Hello, Myron. Thank you for coming to Penn State. I'm very passionate about illegal immigration as a topic. I think it's one of the most pressing issues the United States is currently facing. But from your unique perspective as an ICE agent, I want to ask you about illegal immigrant crime specifically, because as you touched upon before, a lot of economic migrants are posing as refugees and committing asylum fraud. And while they're in our country, they are committing numerous crimes, like such as the murder as Laken Riley. Her killer was committing asylum fraud. And typically the legacy media give a talking point that it's not a big deal. Illegal immigrant crime isn't a big deal because citizens actually commit more crimes than illegal immigrants. But from what I've heard of the various states that collect illegal immigrant crime data, it's only Texas. Now, can you tell me as an ICE agent if that's true or not?
So as far as like collecting data, I know they collect data obviously from all crimes that go down, but you're asking specifically, like, do states collect data as far as like the person being an illegal alien or the person being a citizen committing the crimes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why a lot of the states probably don't collect it is because a lot of states simply aren't interested in immigration status. So I do think it's important to note that before the Trump administration came in, Title 8, which is the immigration code, it only gets enforced federally. And there's only a couple of agencies that can do it. There's Immigration Customs Enforcement, ERO, HSI, Border Patrol, which is the green uniform, Customs and Border Protection, blue uniform, and Office of Air and Marine, which is like at a limited capacity, and then the FBI also has some limited Title 8. But the state has zero immigration authority, so that's probably why they don't ask. And then on top of that, right, because of sanctuary cities and blue states or whatever, they look at it like it's a political hot potato. And this is the thing that really bothers me when it comes to immigration enforcement for the state. Like, now they're getting on board because Trump's in, but I remember many times where when I was an agent, if we would have federal warrants and we'd say, hey, we're going to go pick this guy up. And, you know, the state and locals would not want to come out and help us, right? Because the governor or the mayor of the city didn't want to be attached to that and look bad, because immigration is like a political hot potato where if it's a Democrat in, they typically don't want to touch it. If it's a Republican in, they want to touch it, but within regard where it's like, oh, is this a violent criminal? You know, it's a very touchy subject, and it depends on who's in office. Like, ERO doesn't do anything ever when there's like a Democrat in office. When Biden was in and Obama, they were barely doing, going out and getting people. So, yeah, I think when it comes to that, the states just a lot of times don't report it because they don't feel the need to. But I do think, we need to be very harsh on a lot of these illegal aliens that come here and commit crimes, especially against U.S. citizens. And for those that say, oh, well, they don't commit as many crimes as American citizens, blah, blah, blah. Well, they shouldn't be here in the first place. That's why it's even more egregious and why it's outraging. Like, the fact that someone that shouldn't have been here in the first place can commit a crime or kill an American citizen is absolutely unacceptable. So I think with them, we need to push it to the highest extent of laws and like really punish them because they shouldn't have been here to begin with. So it's one thing if a U.S. citizen commits a crime, but it's another thing when an illegal alien comes in here that shouldn't be here, commits a crime, especially against the USC. So, but no, man, I had the same sentiment when it comes to migrants committing crime here. And yeah, a lot of the fraud too. That's something that no one talks about, especially when they come from certain countries. They claim asylum. They do marriage fraud a lot of the times. They're getting visas in illegally, or they come here on a student visa. This is a big one that a lot of people don't know about. One of the most common ways that people violate our immigration system is they'll get an F1 visa, which some of you guys here might have an F1 visa. As a student, they'll go to like some BS language school in the middle of nowhere that probably doesn't even exist anymore. They'll get that F1 visa, come to the United States, not go to class, and then end up just, skipping out and then just working and staying here illegally for decades. So very, very common tactic that a lot of people employ to abuse the immigration system. And the problem is that we have such the immigration system is so busted that people are able to exploit it from different ways. Whether they come in illegally, they come in legally, there is always a way that they can scam the system. So we need to definitely fix it.
All right, thank you.
No worries, man. Did I answer your question?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Hey, Myron. I moved here 10 years ago. I immigrated from India with my parents. They came here on a visa.
Oh, man, we got to send you back, bro.
Yeah, so they came here legally, worked really diligently, did the entire process, got the green card, and I'll be a citizen within the next year. So I'm really proud about the fact that my parents instilled those same values within me and taught me how to work hard. So my question to you was, what do you think about H-1B visas? Because I think I saw a few posts online saying that you were against it, and popular celebrities like Elon Musk and other people, they tend to defend that. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. This actually, I knew we would talk about H-1B visas. Yeah, so for those that are unaware, I ended up getting like banned on Twitter for being anti-H-1B visa. And my issue with the H-1B visa is that it's a visa that's, often exploited and utilized by, tech companies and a lot of these other companies to employ foreign labor at a cheaper cost, right? We got to just be honest here and realize that's what it's for. And my issue is that I'm a hardcore American nationalist. And when I say I'm a nationalist, I say U.S. citizens over everything. If that means we need to employ U.S. citizens and some foreign nationals don't get a job because of it, I'm okay with that because I think we need to be serving our people first. And a lot of these companies are more interested in, a return on investment and capitalism, and that's what ends up happening a lot of times. Like, capitalism takes over the nationalism. That's a whole other conversation. But when it comes to the H-1B, it needs to be reformed. It's a broken visa. It's abused, especially by tech companies to get cheap labor in. And a lot of times, like the people that get this visa, which a lot of times end up coming from India, they get like basically indentured servitude. Like they got to work for the company for a certain amount of years. They get paid very little. They can't leave. And the reason why these companies do it is because they know if they hire an American citizen, they have to give them a better wage, and that person can leave at any time for a more competitive position. So they look at it like, no, we want to go ahead and get these guys in so we can abuse them. So it's really a lose-lose for all parties. And who benefits? The companies benefit. So I'm against displacing American workers for the benefit of foreign nationals and corporations. And obviously Elon Musk didn't like this, and he took my check away because I was like ratioing him on X for talking about this. But that's a big reason why I voted for Trump, was to go hard on immigration. I think we need an immigration moratorium for at least 1 to 5 years where we don't let people in, because we got to fix our system. Our visa system is messed up. Our border needs to be completely reformed, how we do things. And we need to definitely crack down on the document benefit fraud, because that's been being abused for a long time as well, and people don't talk about that. We focus so much on the southwest border, which is important, but we don't utilize, we don't look at all the other ways where we're getting beat as well when it comes to immigration.
Well, thank you for coming out here. I've been watching your content for a while now. I appreciate you for what you do, and keep doing what you do. Thank you.
I appreciate it, brother. You keep killing it.
First of all, thank you for coming out here, Myron.
Thank you, man.
This may be a little bit of a niche question.
Sure.
But
we can go as deep as you guys want. Pause.
So when I think about Operation Fast and Furious and the Las Vegas shooting, we talk about transferring from Mexico into the U.S. How about the U.S. into Mexico? Or do you come across any kind of mercenaries from prior U.S. military in those cartels?
Great question. So first and foremost, Operation Fast and Furious, I'm glad you asked that question. For those that are unaware, basically we let a bunch of guns walk into Mexico. Those guns ended up in the hands of cartel people, killing people. And one of the worst situations, and this is a situation very near and dear to my heart, because a guy named Jaime Zapata was an HSI agent. He actually was assigned out of Laredo. He was killed by a gun from the Operation Fast and Furious. He was killed in Mexico. And it's funny story. Not funny, but like crazy, wildly, close to home. My supervisor, my first supervisor, he was the one that was supposed to actually go to Mexico instead of Jaime Zapata, and he ended up not going to be with the wife. And it could have been very well him that got killed on that day back in, I think this was like February of 2011. But the Operation Fast and Furious almost got the ATF disbanded. It was such a big problem. But typically when it comes to firearms, we could talk about guns all day. Money and guns typically go south into Mexico, and then drugs and illegal aliens come north. Because in Mexico, funny to believe, they actually have strict gun laws. Like if they catch like a bullet in your car, this is why I never went to Mexico. Because like if you're going over there like as a tourist or whatever, if they catch like one bullet in your car, you might go to jail for 5 years. So it's interesting how they have these strict gun laws, but it does nothing for them. But that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, man, like that's typically what ends up going on when it comes to the guns. A lot of the guns that end up in Mexico came from the United States, especially places like Texas, where they have very lax gun laws. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but I guess the follow-on was, have you ever come across, you could call them mercenaries?
Oh, yes,
with
yes.
respect to prior military in the U.S.?
Yes, funny story. Okay, so, year is roughly 2015-ish, 2016-ish, right? I'm on call, which when you're on call, you're basically, on the line for 24 hours, right? They can call you for anything. So I get a call. I'm like watching Breaking Bad or something like that. And Border Patrol calls me and says, hey, there's this guy here. He wants to provide information. We caught him at the border. Apparently he's been in informant before. He wants to talk to an HSI agent. He doesn't want to talk to Border Patrol. He wants to talk to somebody. So normally, right, you'd be like, man, I'm not going to go out for this, because you can get called at any time. So you want to conserve your energy and not go out for random calls. But me, I was like a go-getter. So I was like, you know what? I'll go out and talk to this guy. Let's see what he has to say. So I get dressed. I go over to the Border Patrol station, Laredo South, right there on 109 Shiloh Drive. And I go there and I sit down and I talk with him. And I'm like, so hey, what's up, man? And I get his information, right? He only wanted to talk to me. He didn't want to talk to any Border Patrol agents. So I was like, okay. As I'm sitting there talking to him, he tells me basically that he's a hitman for the Zetas, and that he worked for the Trevino's. And for those that are unaware, the Trevino's basically ran the Los Zetas cartel for many years. They use call signs Z42, Z40, etc. And he would work for these guys, and his job was, he was basically the guy that ran like cover fire. So when they would move around over Laredo, because there was a war at the time, 2014 and like 2018, the whole time I was there was like a war between the Mexican Marines and the Los Zetas. His job was anytime they move around in their motorcade, and they were getting attacked by the Mexican Marines, his job was to get out the car and start shooting back at the Mexican Marines to create a diversion to allow his boss to escape. Because since the Marines didn't know which car he was in, they would have these diversion techniques. They're like a paramilitary organization. They have these diversion techniques to ensure that the boss always got away. So, and it's interesting because like as he was telling me this story, he was just so like candid and matter of fact about it. It's like, yeah, so I get out the car, I pull out my AK, and I just start shooting at him. And what I do is I try to confirm as many kills as I can because I get a bonus. I was like, what? He was like, yeah, I get a bonus. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, so what I would do is like after I shoot them and I know someone's dead, like I'll go up to the body and I'll cut a finger off. And I would get a bonus per finger that I brought over to the boss. He would get like $1,000 per person he killed or some crazy stuff like that. And he would have to cut the finger off to confirm it when he brought it back to the boss. And it wasn't so much the story was crazy. It was more how he told the story with just plain face, didn't care. It was like, he was like talking like, yeah, this is what I do for work, man. This is my job description. And I guess that's what ends up happening, where when you're doing this as a job all the time for years and years and years, you have to just kind of like look at it that way and just become stone cold. And he was giving me a bunch of information. Basically, he wanted to give information on the Moraleses because I think he got betrayed and he was pissed off. And I was in a human smuggling group at the time. I had a buddy who was in the border violence / kidnapping group, or also known as BEST, Border Enforcement Security Task Force, which is all over the United States. I called him up, hey, got this guy here. It's probably going to be a good source. He came, took it over from there, and I handed him off. But that was something that will always stick with me, how he talked about killing Mexican Marines and how we would go over to the bodies after and cut the fingers off so that he can, claim his prize at the end of the day. Absolutely wild. So.
I'm good, bro. Thank you.
No worries, man. Good question.
How's it going? Once again, thank you for coming out here.
What's up, brother?
I guess my question is just kind of give more perspective to the people here and people at home about like what your a day-to-day could be to you. I guess, what would you say is the most horrific thing that you ever witnessed down at the border?
Sure. And I'm assuming when you say day-to-day, like when I was on the job, right?
Yeah, just I guess an example of how bad it could get.
Yeah, so every day was different, man, because on the southwest border, you're getting calls every day, right? You're getting, on the southwest border, since Border Patrol and Customs are catching illegal aliens and people moving drugs and they're catching guns going south, money going south all the time, you're constantly in response mode. So it's very difficult actually to run like proactive cases because you're getting called so much. And like they have duty where you're on call for 24 hours and then it rotates from like you to other guys in your group. And if someone in your group gets a call, let's say they catch 20 aliens, the whole group's got to go out to interview, all the witnesses and stuff like that. So you end up getting a lot of response cases, right? Now, for me, I did a lot of proactive cases. I was not one of these like reactive agents. I was always on the duty list and took those cases too. But I was real big on doing like, big organized crime cases. But a day for me, man, like I would wake up, middle of the day, right? Like 11, 12. I'd check my phone, check my email, eat something real quick or go right to the office, start working on reports, following up on anything. Maybe an informant would call me. At the time, I was running like 10 informants, some documented, some not, which I could talk about how that works too with informants if you guys want. And then like maybe a guy would be saying, hey, we got a call, we got to run out. Hey, I'm about to do surveillance. Hey, we got an arrest warrant on this day. So every day was different. One day I might be in court. Another day I'd be debriefing an informant. Another day we'd be hitting an arrest warrant. Another day we'd be, responding to the port to seize some drugs. So literally every day was different. I know it sounds very cheesy, but on the southwest border, you're like running and gunning. Like they say 1 year on the southwest border is like the equivalent to like being 5 years in the interior just because things move so quickly, right? So, but that's like what an average day would be. Now, as far as like the worst situation, man, there's so many. But one thing that I could think of off the top of my head that stuck out to me was I remember we got a call one time about a little girl that was kidnapped out of Houston, and the girl, basically they had said that the person that kidnapped her was trying to bring her to Laredo, and Houston's about 5 hours west of Laredo, and they were saying that this guy was trying to get her into Mexico. Apparently she met him in a chat room or something like that. He met her at her house, picked her up. Her parents didn't know where she was, but they looked back at the logs and they figured out who it was, etc. So And at the time, we didn't have like his info. We just kind of like had a rough number or whatever. So I get this call like 1 o'clock in the morning. And it was my buddy, I'll never forget, John. He was the on-call guy. So I think they had contacted the FBI, but they didn't answer whatever. And we're border agents, HSI, so like we're used to getting late night calls. So we went out and we immediately tried to figure out who this guy was. We're looking at all the cameras. I remember being up all night, man, trying to like figure out where this little girl was. And we ended up finding out where she was, and we got the guy arrested. But the thing that I remember the most was like how I was so tired and I was dead, but I was like, you know what, it doesn't matter because I can always sleep later. But if we don't get this, you know, this little girl back, like she's gone forever if she crosses into the border. So we put CBP on notification, told them, hey, lock down the ports. If you see this car, this is the girl, this is the guy who we think is the suspect. And we ended up finding her, but it took, it was up all night, like from 1 o'clock all the way up until like the afternoon of the next day. And it's funny because the FBI didn't like find out what was going on until hours later. Like they like, we heard that there's this girl that's missing. Like, bro, we're already on it. So, yeah. And this happens a lot where agencies fight on the southwest border. That's another thing that's very common as well, interagency fighting, because a lot of the times we have different authorities that all overlap, right? We can all investigate drug trafficking. We can all investigate violent crime to a degree. So there's a lot of competition on the southwest border too, because DEA, FBI, HSI, ATF, all the agencies have a pretty strong representation on the southwest border because of how busy it is.
Yeah. No, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
No worries, man. Good question.
Okay. Were you racist before you worked on the border?
Was I racist before?
Or did it make you racist being on the border?
I've always been racist. I was born racist. I was born this way.
Thank you.
Let's go, baby.
Myron, Chad's getting mad at us in both of the live streams because we're not asking about the Jews. So I do a question for you.
Sure, let's do it.
What is the time scale that we learn at Mass the answer to the JQ?
Man. I'll tell you this, we're going through a mass awakening right now. I've talked with guys that have been talking about this stuff for a minute, right? A couple of decades. And they've even said, I've spoken with guys like, shout out to Lucas Gage, Ryan Dawson, a lot of these guys have been talking about this stuff for like the better part of a decade. They even told me like, dude, the rate at which people are waking up to Israel control of our government is crazy. Like they've said in the past year or so, they've seen more progress than in the 10 to 15 years that they've been talking about it. Because the thing is if you talked about this topic prior to October 7th, man, like you were going to get, it's like an Insta ban, right? And then, hey, I don't want to play the music, right? But like, but if you do the early life check and you figure out who ran YouTube and who ran Facebook and who ran Meta and Instagram and Google during this period of time, and they still do, and many of them, they're all Zionists, man. So, there's a reason why this topic has been taboo for so long, but I think with the overwhelming amount of shock and outrage of what's going on with October 7th, the ADL, Media Matters, a lot of these organizations that typically would censor individuals that were critical of Israel, they just can't go after everybody. There's too many people that are talking about this. And the crazy part is that this is, like I said before, this is like the one topic I've seen people on both the far left and the far right actually agree on. Now, they come to different reasons. They come to the same conclusion for different reasons, right? What I've noticed on the left is they make the humanitarian argument. It's an apartheid ethno-state. They're occupying Israel. It's messed up. They're coming from that angle. And then a lot of people on the far right come from a more nationalist angle, like, hey, we have a foreign government controlling our politicians, and our foreign policy is 100% basically being run by these individuals, which puts us in precarious situations internationally. So they both come to the same conclusion for different reasons, but hey, I'll take it all day, right? Like this is, if someone like me is agreeing with like someone like Hassan Piker, that should tell you that it's a big problem. So, but people are waking up, which is good.
Yeah, and we can thank Elon for that, for facilitating that, even though we may have disagreements on the H-1B position.
I'm sorry?
I said we can thank Elon for that, facilitating that on X.
Yes, and Rumble too. There's been an incredible rise on like free speech platforms, on alternative platforms that allow people to say this stuff. But I would say October 7th definitely like set it over the edge. Then you got people like Candace Owens, Dan Bilzerian, Ian Carroll. It's crazy. On the same day, Ian Carroll went on Joe Rogan, Candace Owens went on Theo Von, and Andrew Tate went on Nelk, and they all talked about Israel. On the same day, I was like, holy crap. And each of these interviews got like millions of views, right? Ian Carroll talked about the dancing Israelis and Epstein. which we could talk about Epstein all day. We all know what he was doing. He was a Mossad asset, or Israeli intelligence asset. Talked about JFK, and then Candace Owens talked about the black male groups. And Andrew Tate said, there's one group you can't criticize in America, and he said, it's the Zionist lobby. So the fact that this all happened on the same day was wild. So,
while we're at it, what's your quick take on the JFK files that's come out?
We were fucking right. That's what I gotta say, man. We were fucking right. The Israelis were absolutely involved in killing John F. Kennedy. If you had talked about this, see, now I'm excited. Bro, if you talked about JFK and you said Israel was involved, they would consider you a fringe conspiracy theorist. They would want to silence you. They'd say, get this guy out of here. He's a kook, blah, blah, blah. But now we know, because the files finally got declassified and they unredacted a bunch of the stuff, we know for a fact what we've been talking about forever. And the long short of it is this, because I know a lot of you guys might be saying, JFK, what is this guy talking about? Long story short is this. John F. Kennedy found out that Israel had a nuclear program that they were working on. He didn't want them to have nuclear weapons for obvious reasons, because now we have the destabilization in the Middle East that we have now, thanks to the Israelis getting this nuclear technology. How'd they get it? They stole uranium, higher grade uranium, from the United States, out of Pennsylvania. This is a great state of Pennsylvania, by the way. From the Apollo facility, and they illegally smuggled it over there, and they used it to create their nuclear program that they have now. And JFK worked really hard to try to get them to stop, and basically Israel lied to them. They made a fake control panel room, had the inspectors come in. JFK figured out it was a lie. And then we find out that James Jesus Angleton, who was a high-ranking CIA officer back then, basically helped Israel procure their nuclear program that they currently have now, after JFK was killed in the 1960s. And he talked about this in closed Senate hearings back in the 70s that were classified. And finally, now we got access to those hearings of what he said in there, where he basically admitted that he helped Israel procure their nuclear program. And we have these files that are unredacted that show that Israeli intelligence was involved in a lot of these situations, and they had been redacted there for decades. And it said, even when you look at the document, on the side it says, like, CIA is okay with declassification except for brackets. All of the brackets were basically Israeli intelligence, and that's what we got a chance to look at with these 80,000 documents. So the conspiracy theorists were proven right. Now I want to say one thing, and then we'll go to the next person, because I do think that this is important. Look, some people say it's a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence, but I find it interesting that the most famous movie that depicts the JFK assassination is a movie by Oliver Stone, 1991, called JFK. Good movie. And in the movie, it documents the pursuit of the JFK assassination from a prosecutor out of New Orleans called Garrison, Jim Garrison, if I'm not mistaken. And the interesting thing is, if you watch the movie, entertaining movie, they talk about the mafia angle, they talk about the CIA angle, they talk about inside job, etc. But one thing that's interesting is that the Zionist angle and the Israeli intelligence angle is completely left out. Well, if you research the movie and you find out who funded the movie, who funded it? A guy named Arnon Milchan. Feel free to Google it on your phones right now and check the early life. I think we know what we're going to see there. But yeah, definitely cha-ching, a big one. Jewish Zionist billionaire running around Hollywood, right? He was the one that funded the JFK movie, as many other Hollywood movies. Now, why is this important? The reason why this is important is because the guy went on Israeli television and admitted that he was a spy. But not only was he a spy, he was a spy for their unacknowledged nuclear program. So let me get this straight. The president that tried to stop Israel from getting nukes was assassinated. We now know that Israeli intelligence was involved. The guy that funded the movie that is the biggest blockbuster hit when it comes to JFK assassination that most Americans are familiar with was a spy for Israeli intelligence for their unacknowledged nuclear program that JFK tried to destroy. Crazy. Absolutely nuts. But then if you say this and you make this connection, they'll say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, I don't think it's a mistake that this guy funded the movie and made sure to keep the Zionist angle out of this movie, because I think if the American public knew that a former president tried to stop Israel from getting nuclear weapons, they got them anyway, illegally, and potentially had a hand in him being assassinated, the American public would not stand for that. They'd be extremely angry. So I think him funding it and being involved in the movie was very important. Now, do I think Oliver Stone, is responsible? Who knows? But what I will say is follow the money. When you follow the money, you figure out where we're going to go, right? We look at Trump's campaign. Who funded it mostly? Miriam Adelson, now we might go to war with Iran because she's a hardcore Zionist and wants to ensure that all of Israel's enemies are destroyed to preserve Israel's hegemony in the Middle East. So if you follow the money, you're always going to go. And this is something that I was taught as an agent. Always follow the money. So, yeah, interesting enough, man. That's my thoughts on JFK. And the fact that, like, an Israeli spy funded that movie that was a part of their unacknowledged nuclear program is just crazy to me. And, you know, I think we need to wake more people up and let them know, like, dude, like, this is wild. So, and there are many other facts that I wanted JFK gone. I'm not going to just sit here and say, the Jews. Like, the CIA wanted him gone. Organized crime wanted him gone. They all had their axe to grind with him. But I find it very interesting how the Israeli intelligence angle is almost never touched upon, and it's censored. And it's been censored that way for a very long time. And we got, it took us 60, 80 years to get the documents unclassified finally to see this angle. So we were right, man. We were vindicated. So.
Hello, it's me again. I came up with another question.
Sure.
It's related to the Columbia and Tufts students who are in the process of getting deported or having their cases heard again because they reportedly violated their student visas or green cards based on, and this is something a lot of, you see a lot of suppression of Free Palestine or groups or protests criticizing Israel by saying that they are promoting Hamas. They're using that reasoning to deport them. Do you think that those criticisms are, or those charges are legitimate? And if not, what do you think would be a legitimate justification for deporting those who already have green cards or are in the process of becoming citizens?
Great question, man. Really great question. Now, with the Homeland Security Act, right, which, you know, obviously came after the Patriot Act, which we know who wrote that off, a guy named Chertoff, which if you do early life on him, we'll know where he's from as well. But that's a whole other conversation. So the thing is that the statute that they're using, I think it's a section of 237 for removing, I don't remember the exact statute, but it's a very unclear, nebulous statute that they're using to use to deport the students. And here's the thing. Obviously, they deported, they began the deportation process for a guy named Mahmoud Khalil out of Colombia, right? And he's kind of been like the main beacon of this, and they've arrested other students as well. I think, honestly, what they're doing here, I don't even think they're really concerned with deporting the students. I think the punishment is the process here. I think they're trying to create a chilling effect to get these students to chill out and stop protesting, especially students from foreign countries. Will they get these guys deported? Who knows? I think the law is very, nebulous at best, and it's going to be tough for them to be able to articulate, like, oh, well, how is this person like a Hamas supporter? Like the girl in Tufts, for example, she just wrote an op-ed talking about boycott Israel. No mention of Hamas in there. So I don't think they necessarily care so much about actually going through the deportation process with these guys. Rather, they want these guys, make these guys an example so other people don't think to protest against Israel, because the college campuses, like, they're the ground zero for some of the opposition for the wars in the Middle East. So they're looking at it like, hey, this got out of control last year. We're going to reel this in. We're going to scare these people into from protesting. And just off of telling foreign students that they get deported, that might bring the protest down by like 50% because they don't want to get deported. So I think that's what their real goal is. Now, as far as like, Hamas and terrorism and everything else like that, and this is kind of where you get into a weird area, because I know a lot of you guys already know this, but like for those that are watching on YouTube or whatever, Hamas is the governing body of Gaza. So it's very difficult to separate the two, where if someone advocates for the freedom of the Palestinians in Gaza, it's very difficult to be able to separate that from potentially benefiting Hamas too, because if you say, give them relief, stop the bombing, ceasefire, well, guess what? Hamas is going to benefit from that because they're not getting bombed and killed too, just alongside the citizens. And since they're amongst the citizens, it's very difficult to be able to clearly articulate if they are supporting Hamas or not, because if you advocate for the Palestinian people, you're kind of by definition advocating for Hamas too, because you don't want them, they benefit from the citizens not getting killed, right? So it's very easy to come to that conclusion, well, you're a Hamas supporter too, which I think that's what they want, so that they could go ahead and put you in a box and say, we're going to deport you now, or whatever, because this immigration law is very nebulous at best that they're utilizing, that Marco Rubio is trying to use. So we'll see what happens. But I do think that the punishment is the process, and that's their goal here. And just to be clear here, I think Hamas is definitely a terrorist organization. they fit the definition. They're committing acts of violence for a political ideology. But if we're going to call Hamas a terrorist organization, so is the IDF. And I think it's also important that people understand that the IDF was created by Ergun, Haganah, Stern Gang, etc. These were all terrorist organizations, even defined by the United States. And then they rebranded and became the IDF. But, Menachem Begin, right, one of the prime ministers, the father of terrorism, his nickname, I don't know if I butchered the last name, but you guys get the point. He ended up becoming a prime minister. He was responsible for the bombing of the King David Hotel, killed 100 people, British people, right, assassinations, etc. So Israel's been committing acts of terrorism for decades, and this is how the state of Israel was created. It was through terrorism. So if we're going to call Hamas a terrorist organization, fair, I agree with that, but we also need to label the IDF as one as well. But yeah, man, I think the punishment is the process here. I don't think they're really too concerned with deporting these students rather than creating a chilling effect and getting these schools to comply.
All right, thank you.
No worries, man.
Hello, I'm back again for another question.
Sure.
Here's an interesting one. I believe for the one they're using to deport students is the Alien Enemies Act, which the Supreme Court just ruled saying they're allowed to do that, so it made it worse for that in that situation.
The one from like the 1700s, right?
Yes.
I'm not mistaken.
I think, or it might have been around World War I.
Yeah. Okay.
That's now allowed again. Also, there's a movie called Some of All Fears. Israeli nuke is used by, I think, something like Nazis to blow up in the Super Bowl. But the interesting one, it correlates this. The bomb's plutonium was American plutonium. Because the story was in Pennsylvania, I believe it was an American nuclear company supplied Israel with the weapons, and they falsified records saying that's how the uranium got to Israel. It's an interesting documentary about that.
What's the name of it?
I believe it's called American Nuclear Company. I'm not sure what the exact name was. It was like I forgot what the documentary's name was. It was on YouTube. It was about all of this because I want to be a nuclear engineer, so I'm very interested in nuclear stuff like this, especially for the fact.
Watch NUMEC by Ryan Dawson. He goes over this as well. It's really good. It's on Rumble. You can't find it on YouTube for obvious reasons. NUMEC is, and that's the name of the facility where they stole the uranium from.
Yeah, I believe it was the exact one. What's the one that's interesting for DHS and also deals with nuclear smuggling, and based on how little containers we actually check, what is the actual threat of a terrorist organization or a rogue state sending something to attack us? And there's one more thing interesting for the Israeli military, comparing them to Hamas. Well, that's because every intelligence organization technically does acts of terror, but it's under the banner of doing it with your state. So if you get a nation, now you're allowed to do terrorism. And also,
absolutely.
Also, nuclear bomb is probably the best defense against war crimes because Nana and Boo-Boo, now you can't invade us. Look at Iraq compared to Israel. They have nukes, can't get invaded.
Yeah, no, I mean, nuclear weapons, a lot of the times are more of a strategic tool than like an actual, weapon. It's used a lot of the times. And this is why, like, Israel's been able to do the things they do pretty much unchecked, is because they're the only country in the area that have nuclear weapons. So, and this is why they're so hell-bent on getting rid of Iran's nuclear program, because they know that if Iran's able to get a nuclear weapon, they will not be able to be as aggressive in their military tactics or escalation towards war as they're being now. So that's why they're hell-bent. And they've been trying to do this for 20 years to get rid of it, but the problem is they need us to do it. So we'll see what happens, man. I really hope we don't go to war, but the way it's looking, like we're close. I'd say we're closer to war now than in a very long time.
There's a weird thing for a seismic event that classified that Iran might already have a nuclear weapon. And there's also the fact, but there's one interesting fact, if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, very quickly afterwards, Saudi Arabia is going to start a program to do it, and then basically by that time the entire region will have one.
Absolutely. And this nuclear arms race has been kicked off since the 50s. Since Israel's been trying, after the Suez Canal crisis in 56, Israel pretty much determined right then and there, we need the bomb by any cost necessary. If that means we need to steal it from our ally, the United States, or we need to go ahead and work with the French to get the reactor, they pretty much were hell-bent on getting that nuclear bomb. And that basically kicked off a arms race in the entire region. And even back, the CIA even told Kennedy, they advised him, when Kennedy made the decision to go after Ben Gurion and tell him, hey, you need to stop this nuclear program, it's because his advisors told him, hey, look, if Israel gets a nuclear weapon, it's going to embolden them to escalate tension in the Middle East and create a lot of problems for us geopolitically. And Kennedy knew this back in the 60s. That's why he tried to stop him, and then he gets killed, and then bam, now they got the bomb, and we've been dealing with the ramifications of it ever since.
I believe it's the one for Israel got their nuke also by developing it with South Africa, which had nuclear bombs at one point, but then decommissioned them. So there was a test in the Indian Ocean that was like a massive plume of energy released that nobody knew what it was, and lots of people now suspect it was an Israeli nuclear test in cooperation with the South Africans. It's almost like, and then we definitely all knew the fact they had it. And there's also one, based on the fact of my other part of my question, what was your opinions of the fact of someone trying to sneak in either nuclear material or nuclear weapon in general into the United States based on current border security from either the north, south, or from maritime?
Smuggling it in or out?
In,
not so much, but out. There's been many. I remember one case I did where there was an Iranian guy that was smuggling out like fighter jet schematics out of the United States, and we were able to get him under the Espionage Act because when it comes to like the Espionage Act, it doesn't even have to be classified as long as it's like defense information or NDI, National Defense Information. You could be charged under the Espionage Act. So I remember that was one. But as far as like bringing it in, not so much. But definitely, people are trying to steal secrets from us all the time. So, but good stuff. Who's up next? Or sorry.
Thank you.
Of course, brother.
I've been following your content for a while now, and you did a couple breakdowns. Did a breakdown of when you caught a guy when you were still working on the border, trying to meet up with a kid or whatever. I think he was an agent. You also broke down, I believe it was Operation Broken Shield, if I'm correct.
Yes.
When they did the corrupt cops. I just wondered how big of an issue is corruption on the southwest border with agents letting things and stuff go through, and have you ever worked on cases like that?
Yeah, definitely corruption on the southwest border because there is a lot of money to be made, by letting loads through. It's not like super common, but at least a couple times a year you're arresting dirty CBP or Border Patrol agents. I remember one case where we arrested, and that's the one I think you're referencing, where a Border Patrol agent from like the Del Rio sector came all the way to like the Laredo area to have sex with like a 13-year-old and it was undercover and their mom. But no, man, it definitely happens. There's like a border corruption task force in a lot of these major areas. One in the RGV, Laredo, El Paso area, because it definitely does happen where people are getting paid off to allow loads in. It's not that common, but it definitely happens a few times a year, I would say. Thank you. No worries, man.
Sean, anything? Good.
Hey, Myron. I love watching your content. I have a couple questions. First question, I know you covered the Syria aspect with Israel and everything. We know after Bashar left, he was deposed by IDF and then a couple rebel groups backed by Turkey and then the Uzbeks and whatever. What do you think is next for the Golan Heights? Because I know that Israel so far has taken past control of the Golan Heights and that they want to effectively make like a fake civil war where it's between the Alawites and the Sunnis and try and like push this propaganda of this former ISIS leader being a good guy, which I personally don't think is a very good take. I mean, I get how they're all back, but what's your opinions on like the future of that region?
Yeah, no, I mean, this was their goal the whole time. I find it very suspicious that right after the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire, these rebels kicked off and basically took Syria over within a week. It was absolutely insane. And I think that was all strategic, right? Russia was obviously weakened from their conflict with Ukraine, so they couldn't use the air power that's kept Bashar al-Assad in power for a very long time. And the rebels were able to systematically take over the country in like 2 weeks, roughly. I don't think that's by just a coincidence, as everyone would say. So yeah, man, I think Syria is going to continue to stay destabilized. Bashar al-Assad is gone. And the thing with a lot of these dictators is these dictators end up keeping the country in peace. As much as people hated Saddam Hussein and Bashar al-Assad, etc., they kept the place relatively stable. But obviously Israel seized on the moment. They destroyed all their weapon capabilities as the rebels were moving through Syria. And this Jolani guy even said it like, oh yeah, we're not gonna, who is literally a former Al-Qaeda guy, beheading people and stuff like that. That's the new leader of Syria. He's over here saying, oh yeah, we're not gonna attack Israel. We don't really care about it. So I think that they were 100% funded and backed by the United States and against Israel because they've been trying to get Bashar al-Assad out of there for a very long time. Because Syria is a critical component of the axis of resistance to move weapons through Syria for Lebanon and Hezbollah. So by them getting rid of him, they were able to really weaken the resistance up in Lebanon. So yeah, dude, a lot of propaganda, 100% Israelis were involved in it. And this is what they've been looking for. And I think, the reason why, guys, I think that we're very close to war, and I think it's very important for people to know this, is that we've never had Iran in a weaker position than they are now. And with Hezbollah being weakened with the pager attack, and their main brass getting assassinated, Hassan Nasrallah, et cetera, being killed in airstrikes, and then you have the Houthis getting bombed right now by the United States, like crazy, and then we have Bashar al-Assad basically fled, and Syria is, in shambles. Iraq has been destabilized for a very long time. Like, Iran has never been weaker. So I think Israel's looking at it like, yo, this is our ability to get our death shot and get rid of these guys, and they want to take it. And I would not be surprised if they tried to do a false flag or something else like that to ensure that there's a war. I mean, we've seen them do it with the Lavon affair. We've seen them try it with the USS Liberty. 9/11, you can make the argument that Israel was involved in that. There's a whole bunch of coincidences that aren't necessarily coincidences in 9/11, where at the bare minimum, Israeli intelligence had foreknowledge that the 9/11 attacks were going to happen. Bare minimum. So I wouldn't put it past them for anything. I mean, literally the motto of the Mossad for decades was, by deception we create war. And they know that the IDF isn't a capable military where you can invade on the ground. Their intelligence agencies are what do the best for them, and they have a fantastic intelligence component, whether it's Shin Bet, Unit 8200, Mossad, and this is what they do. They start wars by doing false flags. So happens all the time.
I mean, I totally agree. What you said about in other streams, like the axis of resistance, and how Iran is kind of put into a corner where they have to act. I mean, you saw what happened yesterday with Trump bombing the Yemenis, and it came out that they were civilians in a tribal thing. I think chat has been asking this. I want to say first, shout out Castle Club. What's your opinions on Big H?
Oh. Yeah, no, definitely. I think one of the most lied about figures in history. I definitely think by far one of the most lied about figures in history. Obviously this is a very taboo topic to even talk about, but I find it interesting that the narrative. This is how I look at it, right? So we've been lied about. We've been lied to about so many different historical facts. I just don't put it past the government or mainstream media to lie to us about something like this. We know that they lied to us about a lot of the facts on October 7th, right? And this is in 2025 with advanced technology and cameras everywhere, and they still lie to our face. So you can only imagine all the lies that we were told about World War II. So am I saying he's an angel? No, but I definitely do think that there were things that were embellished and lied about on him, and I do think he's one of the most lied about figures in history, for sure. So that's why I'm kind of doing my own independent research on it and finding out a lot of things that they don't want us to know.
Thank you, Myron. Shout out OSS, and keep doing what you're doing.
Shout out to you, my friend. Real G's. Always question narrative, man. Always be looking, because, dude, one thing I learned is that they've lied to us about so many different things. It's absolutely wild.
What the fuck is wrong with women?
I'm sorry?
What the fuck is wrong with women?
What is wrong with women? Oh, man. Okay. I was waiting for someone to ask a question about feminism. So, well, for one, I think they need to go back to the kitchen, and they suck at everything. No, I'm just kidding. But all jokes aside, so here's the thing, right? So, as we segue into the feminism thing, feminism has created so many problems in society. If you look at every problem that we have, modern problem we have, you can always attribute it back to feminism. And my thing is this, right? A lot of women don't know what they're signing up for. So they'll sit there and they'll say, oh yeah, I want to get education, I want to make a bunch of money, become successful, whatever. That's cool. But we don't tell them the consequences of that, right? You have a finite amount of time to find, the best man that you can find. You have a finite amount of time to have children. And as you increase your, what I call sexual market value, right? Or not even sexual market value because it's different, but as you increase your status and your wealth as a female, your prospects go down. But on the other hand, as a man, you don't have a timeline. You can, date younger women into your 40s, 50s, 60s. And on top of that, as you increase your value financially and status, you get more options. So women end up lowering their options when they become more successful versus men increase their options. Nice book. I got you, man. I've signed that thing. The real G. So I think if we at least tell women, hey, go in this with one eye open and understand that your success is actually going to hurt you when it comes to finding a family, I think we'd be better off. But we lie to women and tell them that they can have it all. And this is, the Sheryl Sandberg, Chelsea Handler, Gloria Steinem lie, which, by the way, check their early life every single time. This is the lie that we've told women with feminism, with the whole Sex in the City. And I think women are slowly starting to kind of wake up and realizing that you can't have it all. But man, I mean, this has been going on for like 60 years, right? The feminism has absolutely been going on for a long time, and it's a lie to a lot of women. So that's my big problem with feminism is it literally puts women in a very bad spot.
What's going on, Myron? I've been
Yo.
watching you for about 2-3 years now. Been in a relationship for 7 years. My wife enjoys watching you as well.
Nice.
She agrees with everything you say.
Nice, nice.
2
She here
kids.
right now?
No, she's not here.
Okay, well,
She's
shout
at
out
home
to you
with
if you're
the
watching
kids.
from home.
She's at home with the kids. I got a daughter and a son.
Nice.
What do you say to the women that disagree with what you're saying when I've been 25 years old, been in a relationship for 7 years with a woman who's at home watching my kids and lets me be a man? What do you say to the women that aren't listening to you?
Well, they're doomed, right? And this is why. And bro, congratulations, by the way. Like that's what we need. We need more nuclear families. We need more head of households. We need more men being men and more women being women. So like that's literally what's led to this country, like going down the tubes, is because we've lost a nuclear family. So shout out to you for having a family, something that's like underappreciated nowadays. But the thing is this: what I've realized with women, right? After talking to 3,500 plus of them on my show, women put more care in how information is conveyed versus the content of the information conveyed. When I talk with men, I can be very candid. I can use foul language. I can be honest. I can tell them they're a loser. And they'll accept it because men put more stake in the content of the information and the meritocracy of the individual providing the information. But women don't kind of adhere to that. Like if you say it to them in a way that they don't like or it's rude or abrasive, they get offended and then their feelings get in the way and they don't want to absorb the information that you're giving. So I give the information for the men because I do think that men are supposed to be leaders. And if you become that guy and you build it, they will come, right? You could take a woman that's a feminist or have feminist ideology and feminize her quick and turn her back into a woman. But you have to be super on point and have your masculinity on point. So it can be done. But, at this point, man, I don't think we're going to go back. Like, feminism is here to stay. And I really doubt that women are going to concede any of the land or territory they've taken when it comes to the progression through feminism. So I think it's only going to get worse. And it's actually, we're outpacing a lot of these studies that are saying, 50% of women are going to be single by XYZ year. We're outpacing that. So I think the state of relationships is only going to get worse. We see women dominating college attendance. We see women earning more money. We see women becoming more successful. And though that's great for them, that brings a lot of problems for them when it comes to mating because women have an issue with dating and being with men that are of lower socioeconomic status. So when women have the leverage, what ends up happening is they don't settle. They want a better guy. And the guys that actually are attractive to them don't want them back because all the women are chasing the same small percentage of guys. So guys like you that have a family that have, a woman staying at home, that's great because now I know that your kids more than likely are going to become successful. They're going to come from a 2-parent household, stable household. They're going to understand the dynamics of men and women. Like it's so powerful to like me, I have a 2-parent household too. Like seeing my mom and my dad together and seeing my dad being a man and my mom being a woman, you don't appreciate it as a kid, but as you grow up, you realize like, oh man, going back in 2020 hindsight, like this is so important to see my dad doing what he's supposed to do. And a lot of those characteristics have kind of been instilled in me where it's like, hey, you got a leader, you're responsible for your woman. If she wants to work, she does it electively. It's your job to provide for your woman. If she wants to work, she does it from an elected position versus a mandatory position. So, yeah, man, we need more guys like you, bro.
I have another question.
Yeah.
When it comes to like the masculinity of Jews with the Pornhub and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was scrolling on X. There's a lot of truth on X plus a lot of lies too.
Yeah, for sure.
And I seen that majority of the Jews pour a lot of the stuff that destroys masculinity in itself. What percentage of that do you think affects men in the long run, like watching all that nasty 304 bullshit?
Yeah, man, I think pornography is literally one of the biggest killers of this century, man. And the thing is that it's so ubiquitous, it's so easy to access, and it's so problematic because we end up getting guys are addicted to it, man. And what ends up happening is they're like, oh, I could just bust a nut and I don't got to go out there and produce or do anything, and it's just horrible. And then when you look at who pretty much are the pioneers of porn, it's all the same group, right? So Yeah, I think it's a problem. I think I'm glad that some states are like banning it, where you need to be able to put your ID in and stuff like that, and that's keeping a lot of people off. But people are always going to have access to it, man. And I think it's probably one of the worst inventions alongside social media that we've had in modern times is, free pornography. It's terrible for young men. And any guy that's in here that's like addicted to porn, man, like, dude, get rid of it, man. Like, it's not going to benefit you whatsoever. Like, it takes away from your productivity. You're gooning all the time like a moron. It's just not worth it. It really isn't. Like, become attractive, increase your sexual market value, go out and talk to real women. Don't go into porn, man. Yeah, I appreciate that, brother.
Hello, I'm back.
Yo.
Hello, I'm back again for using once for this one. One of the times, first because of the nuclear power, but also because of the time and culture. I personally believe, and I'll argue with you to the end of the earth if you do not believe this, and mostly not just talking about you, but anyone in general, that America's golden age, if we had to pick one, the world went boom, mostly because of Israel, today, I would say the 50s and 60s were America's golden age. Do you say that's true because of the nuclear family and everything like that?
I agree.
That's the thing that made me want to vote for Trump. I'll vote for the person who make that more likely.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, you don't have a country if you don't have the nuclear family. That's literally the backbone of any thriving society is a nuclear family. So, yeah, we need to get back to those traditions. And like I said, and this is why I'm such a harsh critic of feminism, because feminism has effectively destroyed the nuclear family. Like, women, what's ended up happening thanks to feminism is average women no longer want average men, right? So that's what's created a lot of the issues here, where we have a dating marketplace where most men are effectively invisible to most women. So, and there's a bunch of reasons for that: social media, dating apps, etc. It's all made the dating landscape far worse for men than for women. And both parties are losing, because on one end, women have this, like, they think they have all this choice, but in reality, they just have a bunch of sexual suitors. And then for men, they're basically ignored by a majority of women. So both parties are kind of losing in their own right in different ways.
One other thing for this one that's making feminism even look more, it's about all the issues of people trying to, even though biology class like to say they're wrong in every conceivable way of why feminism is supporting people who are trying to change their gender, which is scientifically improbable in every way, which also is not helping them in the slightest. Got any opinions about anything like that?
Man, mental illness, dude. There's two genders. And I mean, the fact that, that should, what's interesting? Like, Trump and Vance campaigned on common sense. Like, just to bring things back, like, the fact that a presidential candidate was campaigning on common sense, that should tell you guys where we are in the state of affairs in the United States. 99 genders. We have these people that are trying to read books to kids in drag attire, like, absolutely wild. So, I think a lot of Americans woke up and realized, like, this is where we're heading, and they're like, hey, we need to go back to common sense, and that's where we're. But I think the fact that they even had to campaign on saying we have common sense shows where we were as a nation. So, do I agree with all of Trump and J.D. Vance's policies? Of course not, right? I'm very critical of their foreign policy when it comes to Israel and the Zionist lobby. We'll see what happens with this tariff situation. And we're not getting the immigration that we wanted, but I do think that we're in a better position now than we would have under a Kamala Harris and Biden administration once again.
Yeah, if those two dinguses won based on how much Biden was giving freedom to Israel, and that one, my personal opinion, if Kamala won, our country would have been basically dead, at the very least. We've been under the thumb of multiple foreign powers, not just Israel.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people, funny story, Kamala Harris was actually in Ukraine a few weeks before Russia invaded. So, what was that? 4 days before? Yeah. There you go. So she gave a bad blowjob, clearly. So, she fucked up. Who's up next?
Too much teeth.
Yeah, too much teeth. Facts.
I'm here to ask a question.
Yeah.
Jake Moller told me to ask. He said, who's your favorite author? And he wants to know what chapter of Minecraft you're on.
Wait, who's my favorite author and what was the other one?
What chapter, about the chapter of Minecraft that you're on?
Oh, I'm still going through it. I'm on the J part, going through, controlling the banks and the politics. It's crazy, man. Like, there's a lot of parallels in that book that are kind of standing true to today. So, but I haven't finished it yet. I've been like slacking since I've been streaming every day. But I definitely am going through it. I'm gonna follow Kanye 2 chapters a night. So, anything else?
I just want to shout out Castle Club and
Hey.
the crypto mindset. So I just wanted to say thank you for all the advice that you gave me, and I truly learned a lot from you. And thank you again.
Awesome, bro. Hey, man, I hope the markets are down, man, so we can definitely get some Ethereum for cheap. Yeah, man. And guys, like this, hey, anytime the markets are crashing like this, man, like look at it as an opportunity, guys. Like don't look at it like, oh my God, It's like, no, man, like when there's blood in the streets, it's time to eat. And this is where you can like really make some great moves with the markets crashing. What's up, bro?
So, given the rise of certain movements like the incel movement and the black pill movement, what are your message to all the young men that are looking to follow such movements?
Good question, bro. And this is something that doesn't get talked about much. Now, the black pill movement, guys, for those that are unaware, is basically a movement where guys are saying, hey, it's hopeless, it's done, women only care about looks, you know, I'm going to forever be an incel and I'm cooked. Now, here's the thing. It's really on you how you move, right? Like, you can take the information and decide to be, oh my God, it's over, pessimistic, I'm never going to get a girl, I'm forever alone. Or you could take the information, adapt to the new sexual marketplace, understand that being average is no longer acceptable, and increase your sexual market value, and get your money on point, go to the gym, etc. And I tell guys all the time, you don't make money and go to the gym and become successful for women. You do it for yourself so you don't have to tolerate the fuckery that inevitably comes with women. Because what you'll realize is the lower your sexual market value, the more you have to tolerate bullshit from females. But the higher your sexual market value, the less you have to tolerate BS from women. And women are far more likely to tolerate BS from you, right? You want to have multiple girls, you want to have certain worldviews or whatever. You'd be amazed at how much women will bend to your whim if your value is high enough, right? Girls that sit there and say, I would never share a man. Well, if you're that guy, she'll be a part of, 2 or 3 other girlfriends and they're going to Disney World together. Trust me, I know. So you can make that happen. It's just about having a positive outlook. Now, with that said, I'm a big proponent of men having choice. So if you want to be monogamous and have like a traditional conservative Christian relationship, great. If you want to have multiple women, great. But my thing is I want you to be in the driver's seat of your life, and having a black pill mindset is just going to set you up to take a lot of L's and just be negative. And you're going to just sit there like, oh, I give up, right? You're just going to have doom and gloom. And I think that is something that's very common amongst young men. And I'm here to tell you guys, in my 20s, I wasn't getting that many chicks either. I was like struggling. I was on the southwest border by myself. I was, just working all the time, etc. But I think for young men, I think one of the most important things you guys need to realize is you have time, okay? Your 20s is when you're going to be at your lowest value as a man. And I'm telling you guys this as a dude who went to college just like you guys. I remember sitting in those same seats up in Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts, right? I remember being broke. I remember, being, naive and not understanding how the real world worked, etc. And then gradually becoming a man and figuring out that as a man, you gain your value from experience, competence, making money, getting your status up, and there's nothing wrong with taking your time for that. But for all the guys that have a black pill, pessimistic mindset in your 20s, trust me, if you do the work, it does get better. Men age like wine if they do the work. But that's the key, is they got to do the work. Feeling sorry for yourself and whacking off to porn and saying, it's over, I'm cooked, that's not going to help you. And that's really the main thing I want guys to know. Yeah, no worries, man.
Okay, thank you everyone for asking questions to our speaker up here, and thank you, Myron, for answering the questions.
Absolutely.
Okay, Sean said one more, so.
Yeah,
hey, man, I'll answer everybody's questions. I'm here, so as long as you guys want to ask questions, I'm here, man. The show goes on. We're not Hollywood over here.
Yeah, mine's quick and his
We're for
is
the
quick.
fucking people.
Yeah, mine's quick. Now that you've taken the challenge of speaking on a college campus, is there anyone you would like to challenge or like to see speak on a college campus too?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, I think me and Nick Fuentes versus, Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro would be pretty good. We could talk Israel all day, because I think this is a conversation that, traditional conservatives that are, in the right wing can no longer run from this topic. I think the Great Awakening is here. People are waking up to our greatest ally and how they don't really give us any strategic benefit, despite the claim that they do. And I think we need to have this conversation on one of the biggest stages. And yeah, dude, that's what I think. I think that'd be a great discussion, great debate. I don't think they'll accept it for obvious reasons, because I do think that the Israel position is an indefensible position when it comes to American foreign policy. But I'm just glad that people are waking up and realizing that our greatest ally isn't really necessarily our greatest ally.
Hi, given your expertise regarding relationships with women, I just want to ask you, what are some non-negotiables that you would find when you get in a relationship with a woman?
Good question. So I think it's very important that your woman is cooperative and listens to you and obeys you. And I know for some women in here, or some people that might hear that might be like, oh my God, obey, that's so messed up, misogynistic. But I look at it like this. So as you guys know, Donald Trump is the most powerful man in the world, right? He's the president of the United States, really of the chief world power, right? Commander-in-chief. When he got shot at Butler, Pennsylvania, he wanted to stay there and pump the fist and say, fight, fight, fight. But guess who dragged him off? Secret Service, right? And the reason for that is because the Secret Service is responsible for his safety. So if you are responsible for someone's safety, that means you have a degree of authority over them, right? So I think with men and women also need to understand is if you want a guy that's going to be a dominant, assertive, strong man who's going to protect you like he should, by the way, he needs to have some degree of authority over you. If he tells you, hey, look, we're going to do this, or hey, I need you to do this, instead of women saying, oh, well, I'm not going to do that, blah, 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 well, that's not a woman that you want, because if she ends up not listening to you and then doing something and putting herself in a precarious or dangerous situation, this isn't someone that you want beside you because she can't follow you. And I think there's a reason why women are looked at as helpmates in all the biblical texts and every civilization. They've always been, the man is supposed to be the head, the man is supposed to be the leader. And women are attracted to this. It just simply works. It's how we've run civilizations for thousands of years and how we've been able to get past, primates and animals and destroy, and be able to have human innovation was through this social setup. So I think the number one thing is the woman needs to follow you. She needs to submit and obey you. And because you're supposed to be the protector, provider. And then from there, everything kind of goes from there. That's where you kind of dictate your terms. Now, every guy's different. Some guys, are okay with their girl going out to bars and clubs. I'm personally not. Some guys are okay with her having guy friends. I'm personally not. But I think it's important that you have your boundaries and you state your boundaries to her. Before you become her boyfriend, by the way, do not give her the commitment until she aligns with your belief system. She should be asking you out, and I know there's people like, wait, hold on, that doesn't make sense. But there's a reason for that. But I think the biggest thing is that you need to decide what you want from her, and she needs to comply. And if she doesn't, goodbye. And I think that's the biggest problem is that a lot of guys just take what they can get, and they'll tolerate whatever bad behavior comes from the woman just because they want access to vagina, and that actually makes you less attractive by doing that. So having boundaries and standards is extremely important as a man.
Thank you.
No worries, man. Guys, you're the boss. Don't forget that. Men lead, women follow, despite what feminists try to tell you. They want a guy that tells them what to do, not the other way around.
I have one more question in
Sure.
regards to a good bank account with interest rates. Josie told me to ask how many Jews were killed in the Holocaust.
Ah, man. 271. This guy. No worries. Fresh he's in France right now.
No, he's in the UK, right?
Yeah, he's in yeah, I don't know if he's in the UK. I think he's in France right now, but he's in Europe. Yeah. Nah, he's posting on his X and stuff like that. And so, he's flexing. Me, man, I'm just bro. I was gonna go, but I'm like, dude, they can arrest you for tweets made in America. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that wild? The United Kingdom is a failed nation, bro. Absolutely failed. Cucked. They lost the war in 1776 wearing red jackets like idiots, and now they're pissed off at me, bro. It's like, what's going on here, man? Over some tweets.
Okay, so that is the end of our Q&A portion for tonight's event.
Yeah, unfortunately, we'll be kicked out of the room in a minute, so you want to close off some final thoughts, then we'll have a few last announcements.
Yeah, guys, thank you for having me. It's always fun to, talk with guys and girls in college, right? I could see a lot of you guys are a bit more based than I thought, right? I thought it was going to be like a woke day, like, oh, you're a misogynist. I know that there's some protesters outside, but glad to be here, man. It's cool to talk to you guys, and I'll hang out if you guys want to take pictures or anything else like that. And yeah, man, thanks for coming, guys. Myron Gaines X on all the platforms, Twitter, YouTube, banned on Instagram right now. We'll see if we get it back. But it's just a common occurrence, right? Getting banned all the time. So yeah, Myron Gaines X everywhere, and then obviously Fresh and Fit as well. We go live Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m., and then we do the after hours with the girls. If you guys want to see me lose hair follicles and get more grays, Fresh and Fit after hours. So yeah. Thank you, brother.
Everybody give a big round of applause.